That's fine. That's not either way, it's fine. Okay, so today's daf is daf Hof Tes, and I believe we're right at the bottom of daf Hof Ches and base. Today's learning should be for a schus for a full shalema for Shifra Bas Chavarochel. She is my mechutton's daughter. She's a 32-year-old mother of 5 who was not feeling well the past couple of weeks, and it got bad. They rushed her into the hospital, and last night the doctor said they don't know if she's going to be alive this morning. So she's literally fighting for her life. Rosh should give her a full shlema. Okay, so we are at the bottom of Daf Chav Chesed Beis, Rabbi Yehuda Imer. So Rabbi Yehuda said that if they were kroigim, so someone was a son-in-law, and then his wife died, but he still has children, he's still postulates. Amar Rav Tanchum, Amar Rav Tavla, Amar Rav Bruna, Amar Rav. Halacha to Rav Yehuda. Halacha is like Rav Yehuda. You know, we're not up here. I apologize. We're actually 2 dots higher. I forgot about that. So we're up to Chargoi Levadai. We had in our Mishnah a list of 10 people that are postulators. The 10th person was Chayre, which is a stepson. But all the other ones listed in the Mishnah, which are 9, seem to not only be postulators, but Hein Uvnei Sein the Chesneim. So Tana Rabbanim, Chargoi Levadai, which is Pashtus of Yehuda. Chargoi is Levadai, meaning out of all 10, the Chayre, the stepson, only he is postulators, but not his children and his Chasan. Rabbi Yosy Omer Gisai, it's his brother-in-law. Gisai means 2 men who marry 2 sisters, two strangers who marry 2 sisters. They are brothers-in-law, and they're one of the people that's listed in the Mishnah, and they're postulators. And Rabbi Yosy says that's also Levadai. B'Tanya Idich, we have another brisa that seems to be another brisa that is Rabbi Yosy. B'Tanya Idich, Gisai Levadai. So let's just stop for a minute. Rabbi Yosy holds Gisai Levadai. Avol, Rashi says, B'noi v'chasnoi ksherim legisai. So Rabbi Yosy is going to hold that we're not yet sure what he holds by Chargoi, but Rabbi Yehuda says Chargoi is Levadai. Rabbi Yosy says Gisai is Levadai. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Chargoi, it means just the stepson. So my Ka'amar, what exactly is Rabbi Yehuda saying, and what exactly is Rabbi Yosy saying? If this is what you're going to understand them as saying, that they're not arguing at all, they're both in agreement that Chargoi Levadai v'hu adin lagisai. Rabbi Yehuda said Chargoi Levadai. It's the chayeg that only he himself is possible, but not his children. And Dr. Yehuda v'hu adin lagisai. The same thing would be with the brother-in-law. He's possible, but not his children. So what that would do is that would bring it to 8 people who not only are they postulators, but also their children, and there's 2 people, the Chayrig and the Gisai, who it's only them themselves. Also Rabbi Yosy, remember, and Rabbi Yosy seems to have said the same thing, Gisai Levadai, Vodin Lechargai, which means both are in agreement that both the Gisai and the Chargai, although they themselves are possible, La'edos, their children and their Edemis would be kosher ladies. But the problem is that neither of these 2 opinions, which are one and the same, would be consistent with our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah that explicitly states that by the brother-in-law, it's not only him who's postulators, but his children as well. Mami, who will our Mishnah be going according to? Loi Rabbi Yehuda v'loi Rabbi Yosy. So who would be the Tana of our Mishnah? Both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosy, who are any Tanoim that we know that expressed an opinion about this subject, both hold that even Gisoi, it's only the Gisoi that's possible Edus, but not his children. This is what we'll be forced to say. Chorgoi levadoi, avol Gisoi, hu ubenoi v'chosnoi. What Rabbi Yehuda holds is like our Mishnah, that only the Chayrik, that he himself is possible Edus, but not his children. But Gisoi, like the Mishnah says, it includes hu ubenoi v'chosnoi. And our Mishnah would be perfectly consistent with Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yosy would be arguing on our Mishnah. But Rabbi Yosy lememar Gisoi levadoi, avol Chorgoi hu ubenoi v'chosnoi. Rabbi Yosy would hold it's exactly the opposite. He would take the exact opposite position of Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore the exact opposition of the Mishnah. And that is that it's the Gisai who's only possibilities, but his children are allowed. But the Chayek, there even his children are also. And our Mishnah would be consistent with Rabbi Yehuda. So now let's think for a minute. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we have 9 out of 10 that include B'noi v'chosnoi. The one that's not included is the Chayrik. According to Rabbi Yosy, it's just the same. 9 out of 10 include B'noi v'chosnoi. 1 doesn't. But according to Rabbi Yosy, it's the Gisai. The problem is we have a brisa that Rabbi Chia quoted that seems to disagree with both these options. Now, Lahadatani Rabbi Chia Shemaina Avos saying Esrim Barba, and we had this same brisa quoted from Rabbi Chia yesterday.
Yosy, aren't we on Chav Testament base on the bottom?
Chav Testament base? Oh,
Base Lamed.
The vote over here. Oh, that's what happens when I sleep in.
I'm trying to figure out where you are. Sorry, I apologize.
You should apologize for not telling me earlier.
I know all this. We did this all yesterday.
I'm making a mistake.
We did this all yesterday.
I remember this from last cycle.
Yeah. We did this yesterday.
Oh, we did do this yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm very, very sorry. I'm very sorry. That's right. Now I remember. We learned Shalina L'Safri Dabaye V'Yadi L'Safri D'Raviyadi. They know that you're not allowed to write a star unless the loiva told them to write that star.
Correct.
Or unless a kinyan was made. So that's really what we ended off with yesterday. Okay, thank you very much. Can you imagine if I would have learned to hold off and no one would have told me anything? That would be really sad. So thank you very much for bringing it up. Okay, listen, I still have 33 minutes, so maybe we could do it. Hahu Odisa. We were talking about Odysseus, which is a star that would represent a loiva who went in front of 2 Eidim or 3 Eidim and said, I, Reuven, owe Shimon $100,000. The Havaksiv Bey, normally, who would write and sign in Odisa? Eidim would write and sign Odisa saying that he, Reuven, was made in front of us, that he owed Shimon $100,000, and he told us to write the star, and that's why we're writing the star. The problem is the nusach of this star was written not like it was coming from Eidim, rather it looked like it was written as if it was coming from a bezdin. This is what happened. And as Rashi says, so they used a nusach that would be used by Dayanim. Now the problem is, when there's Dayanim, it means there was a Bezdin. We know a Bezdin could also write an Odisa, but Bezdin needs 3 people. The problem here is this was written like it was written by a Bezdin, yet there was only 2 people signed. Now we learned what happens if Bezdin paskins on something, and then they want to write it down. They want to record their psak in the shtar, but after the psak, one of the Dayanim died. So you can't get all 3 Dayanim to sign. So we learned, what is the process? The 2 Dayanim write, we were sitting 3 Dayanim and we paskin A, B, C. One of us, Rahman al passed on, and therefore 2 of us are going to sign to represent that we paskin with a bezdin. So here you have a star, Odisa, that sounds like it was written by a bezdin, but only 2 people signed. The Chalisha Vedina, you will have a ksivba, and when 2 people signed, they didn't write the nusach that they would write if one of the dayanim went missing. They didn't write, although only two of us are signing, three of us pass. They're not writing that. So it's something is wrong here because it was written by a bezdin of two, and that's not good. So Rabbeinu Meimar, Hani de Resh Lakish. Ravina said, you know what, maybe we can invoke the same svar of Resh Lakish that we could assume any star written would have been written by someone knowledgeable who would have only done something kalacha. And even though two items signed, we know there must have been three dayanim there. This is what we said in the name of Rava. In such a case, you might not be choshet to a sofer that would write something wrongfully, but Bezdin could make a mistake. We might have Bezdin who holds Shishnaim Ksherim Lod. They might have thought that two people could paskin, and that's why they're doing it. And therefore, this is not valid. Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, Ikasav ba Beidina, if it says we were a Bezdin, then, as Rashi says, Hakol Yoidin, everybody knows, She'ein Shnaim Kurim Bezdin, even a Bezdin Toyin, everybody knows less than three is not a Bezdin, and therefore, Suloi Tzarech, it doesn't matter if only two of them signed. Practically, I don't understand the whole problem according to Rava. Why should you be Choshit Levezin Toyin? V'dilma Bezdin Chotzefu. Don't we know that Shmuel paskins that although two dayanim cannot make a bezdin, but if they did, it would be valid. It would be a chutz b'dika bezdin because they think they can paskin with two, but nevertheless the bezdin would be valid. So maybe in fact this star written by bezdin was written by a bezdin of two, and according to Shmuel, although it's not nice, but it is valid. Dr. Gemara. V'dilma bezdin chotzefu, d'amar Shmuel shnaim shadonu dinein din, ela shenikru bezdin chotzefu. Zok to Gemara, it's not possible that happened. The Ksiv Bey Dina de Ravna Ashi. It says in this star the bezdin of Ravna Ashi. Now the Pashas, this is Ravashi. There was a bezdin of Ravashi, and Rashi says that why did it pick Rav Ashi's bezdin? Because Ravina and Ravashi were the ones who Messiah Shas. They put the Shas together, and Ravashi was the posuk of that generation. And Rashi quotes Rav Ashi v'Ravina Soifei. So this story happened in those days, and Rav Ashi was the big Bezdin. So it says that this was the Bezdin of Rav Ashi. Surely it was a Bezdin of three. Any other Bezdin you could be Choshit. They didn't know, but not Rav Ashi's Bezdin. V'dilma Rabbanan devei Rav Ashi k'Shmuel severe lohu. Maybe they hold like Shmuel that two is a good Bezdin and two could write such a star adisa. Zok Gemara, we know that couldn't have happened. It says that Rav Ashi is the one who specifically commanded us to write this star. He for sure wouldn't have told us to write an adisa with less than three, and therefore we can assume that this star was written with a bezdin of three, and it's a good adisa. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabban, Amar Lohen Echad. Someone told, I guess Yusoimim, Ani Ra'isi Avichem, I saw your father. Shehit min mois, he put away money, B'sheda Tevel Migdal, in some type of cabinet. V'Omar, and he said, Shall ploini hein, this money belongs to Reuben. It's not my money, I owe it to Reuben. Or Shal Meiser Sheni hein, these funds are funds of Meiser Sheni. The halacha is bivayis loy amar klum. If this is in the house of the estate where this witness couldn't just go in and take it, so he has no control over that money, he's just saying what he saw, he doesn't have an eman. Ein an eman, why? Because he wouldn't have been able to take them and carry out the wishes of what he claims he heard. But Besada, if this money is in a Sada somewhere where he could just go and take it and treat it as Mois Masha Sheni, or this guy can just go take it and give it to the person who he heard the father saying it belonged to, then Dvar of Kayamet. What's the general rule? Kol shabiyadei litlan dvarav kayamin. If the person saying this story, this testimony, could actually make it happen, so it's biyadai, then he's neman. Ein biyadei litlan, but if he can't because it's in private property, locked up in someone's personal safe, loy omar klum, he doesn't have an neman. Harei sharo esavi. And what if the children saw that their father hit min mois b'shei the table migdal? They saw their father hid money away, and they heard when their father was putting this money away, they heard their father say, "V'yomer shal ploinihem, shal ma'aser shenihem." So it all depends on his tone of voice. Im kemoiser dvarav, im kemoiser kama dvarav kayom. Moiser means Rashi. Im nira lahem kemoiser dvarav lebanov be'emes v'loshen tzava. If he's basically telling them, I want to settle my affairs. I want you to know what's going on. These are the passwords on my logins for my bank accounts, and these are the assets that I have. And these are the passwords to my stock account, and here are my spare checks that are pre-signed. He's setting them up. So then they have to assume that what he's saying is the truth, and therefore they would have to give the money to Ploini or treat the money like a Ma'aser Shein. But im kamarim, if you see that he wasn't really earnestly trying to tell us what to do with it, rather, jahu misyore shelo yitlam b'chayav. He was afraid that his kids are going to go on a spending spree, and he was just trying to say, by the way, you can't just spend this money. It's spoken for. That's one reason why he might say that. Oy shelo yachziku ka'asher lahaysev al yitzyaser. He wants his kids to think that he's not wealthy, because his kids are going to go and on a spending spree, so he doesn't want them to spend so much money. He doesn't want them to up their lifestyle thinking that their father has so many millions of dollars. So therefore, he's trying to put them off, let them think that the money is not his. So I guess when children hear this from their father, they can sort of tell what he's trying to do over here. Im kema'arim, then lo yamar klum. Of course, it doesn't have an amos. What happens if a guy feels bad? It seems like his father had a lot of money, and his father didn't tell him what to do with the money. So now his father died, and he's I know my father left over a lot of money, and I don't know where they are. I can't find those coffee pots. I don't know where they're hiding. Uba balachaloim, and someone had a dream. Who is this balachaloim? So Rashi says it's the sar hamarach haloimus balayla. It's the malach that's in charge of creating and making dreams. And Mepharshim tell us that this is malach Gabriel. Uba balach haloim v'amaloi, and he told him he had a dream. Kach v'kachem, this is how much money is waiting for you. And you know where your father hid it? The machim ploinihem. And these are the passwords to all of his bank accounts. But shel ma'aser shenihem. So Zok to Gemara, Zahya Maisa. This actually happened. So someone had a dream telling him where all his father hid his money, where his father hid all his money, and also told him that the money is Ma'aser Sheni. And then he went and he found the money. He was ecstatic. But what is he supposed to do? It's all Ma'aser Sheni. So the Rav paskin for him, you do not give any credence to a dream. Yes, they happen to know, the dream happened to know where they're hidden, but nevertheless, you could treat them like your own money. You don't have to give them to Ma'aser Sheni. From Achalim, you don't paskin. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Shnai Moimrim Zakai. Zok to Gemara, we said if two Eidim say Zakai, two Dayanim say Zakai, one says Chayiv, you follow the right. If two Dayanim say Chayiv and one says Zakai, again you follow the right. So the question is, we also know you're not supposed to say I said Zakai, he said Chayiv, right? Lucia says that. So how would they write this psak? Michtav Hechi Kasvi. How would they write down this psak? Rabbi Yechon Amar Zakai. All they would write is Zakai. We as a bezin all paskin that this person is Zakai, even though there were other opinions. Rabbi Yishlokish Amar, they're much more specific. Ploini uploini mizakin uploini mechayiv. They actually write it like the verdict of the Supreme Court. The dissenting opinion is also highlighted. So the Baldin knows which Dayanim were with him and which weren't. Rabbi Amar midevrayim nizdaka ploini. You write from the consensus of the Dayanim, this person was found to be Zakai, which indicates that it wasn't unanimous, but the verdict was Basaroiv, that's the Zaka Pliny. My Benayu, why is there this distinction between the three opinions, how this psak din is expressed? Zok Gemara, Ike Benayu, Lishlumi, Iu, Mansa Badayu. What if they made a mistake? Now, if a dayan makes a mistake and is mechayiv somebody and he shouldn't have, they don't reverse the psak, but they have to take the money out of their pockets and pay the person who they improperly were mechayiv. So the Gemara wants to say that maybe that's why there's a difference as to how it's expressed. How it's expressed. How does that work? The Laman Damar Zakai, according to the Mandamar who holds that the Bezdin presents the psak as a unanimous psak, so all three of us are equally responsible for the psak. Mishalem, even the third dayan who didn't rule wrongfully, he would also have to pay because he said zakai as well. Ulamanda Amar ploini mizakin uploini mechayvin, then loy mishalem, because I didn't pass it wrong, they passed it wrong, and the wrong verdict was carried out because of them, not because of me. So maybe that's what the machloek is about, whether or not the dayan who did have the right answer but was overruled, does he have to pay him? Zok Gemara, Ulaman Domer Zakai Mishalem. If you hold that the Zakai has to pay, why? Leimalahu, let him tell the other two dayanim, if you would have listened to me, Atunami lo shomisun, you wouldn't have had to pay. So why would anybody hold that I would have to pay? Elo ikabenayu. So therefore, we have to offer a different suggestion as to what's the difference. Why do they argue about how the psak is presented? The question is, the two dayanim who ruled wrongfully, are they responsible for the whole psak? And they have to pay between the two of them, each one half. They got to pick up the tab of the third dayan who didn't pass it wrongfully. Or maybe not. They each pay 1/3 and the other third doesn't get paid at all. I voted properly. I don't got to pay. You don't got to pay for my half either. So maybe the Mandamar who holds that you express this as a unanimous psak, mishalmi, they would have to pay. The dayanim who ruled wrongfully would have to each pay their fair share and cover for the dayan who ruled properly. The Mandamar ploni mizakin, ploni mechayvin, loy mishalmi. Then they wouldn't have to pay only for their part. Zok Gemara, Ulamanda Amar Zakai Mishalmi, if you hold that they do have to pay, the lemrele, let them tell him, why should we pay your share? Ilav at ba'adon, if you wouldn't have been sitting with us, loy have a solik dina. Midi. We couldn't have paskin. We need all three of us to paskin. So you might have paskin against us, but you facilitated us being able to paskin wrongfully because you were there. So therefore, the Gemara rejects this entire pshat, and the Gemara assumes that they only have to pay for their share. Well, their psak was cruel too. Ella ikabenayu. The reason why we have a three-way machlokes as to how to express the psak has nothing to do with payment. It's all about what's appropriate in speech. Ikabenayu loiselech rachel bamech. Rabbi Yochanan Zakai, we're not allowed to tell the Baldin who said what. It has to remain unanimous. So therefore, you express the psak as a unanimous psak, mishum loiselech rachel. Rishlaga shomer, lonu ploni mizakin, or ploni mechayvin, mishum nemechzik shikra. If you're going to express it as a unanimous psak, it's simply not truthful. It's not truthful because it wasn't a unanimous psak. Rabbi Lozer islay demar, vislay demar. He holds you should say loiselech rachel, but he also holds you can't give off an impression that it's unanimous. Midivrayim, from the conclusion of these three dayanim, nistaka ploini, he was exonerated, but it sort of indicates that not everybody was unanimous. It said after they finished deliberating, so then they would bring back in the Edom, it seems to say. They would bring them in, and then the head dayan would read the verdict. So Zok Tahelige Gemara. Laman, who do they bring in? Who are they bringing in after they finished deliberating. If we're talking about bringing back in the Baladinin, nowhere in the Mishnah does it record that they were sent out. The Dayanim were the Eidim were sent out one at a time. But where do you see that the Baladin was ever sent out? That now the Mishnah is telling us that we're bringing him back in. Hasam Kaimi, they're right there. Elul Eidim must refer to the Eidim. Dr. Kaman, the Loik Reb Nosson, this is not consistent with Reb Nosson. The Tanya we learned, La'olam Eine Dusin Mistarefes Ad Shiyiru Shneim Ke'echad. There's a machlokes. The Tanakama holds that Edus are not a set of Edus unless they both saw the incident at the same time. For instance, if Reuven borrowed $100,000 from Shimon, unless both Edim saw that particular loan where Reuven borrowed $100,000 from Shimon, that would not be a good Edus. That is the shita of the Tanakama. If one aide comes along and says, on Sunday morning, I saw Reuben borrow $100,000 from Shimon, and the other aide came along and said, I saw on Monday morning, Reuben borrowed $100,000 from Shimon. Now, they're both saying independent testimony that Reuben owes Shimon $100,000. So that's a good aidus, and we could make Reuben pay $100,000. Lamaisa, he might owe $200,000. There are two separate loans. But since between the two of them, it is clear that Reuben owes $100,000, they would be accepted as a set of aidus. That is one machlokes. That's not what we're discussing now. We're discussing a second machlokes, and that's the following. Two Eidim have to come together. They can't be presenting their testimony separately. That is the shita of the Tanakama. They can each present their testimony even on different days. They don't have to say their testimony together. So Zok to Gemara, the words are not mafurish in our Gemara, but Rashi sticks in over the words. Let's say that our mission is not consistent with Reb Nosson. Why not? Our mission seems to indicate that each aide presents his testimony separately, and we analyze each one separately. That wouldn't be consistent with Reb Nosson, because our mission says, why do you bring the Eidim in afterwards? You bring them in because you want them to testify together. So from our mission, it's much more that there's a requirement that the Eidim testify together. So even though we interrogated them separately, they have to come in and both testify together. According to Reb Nosson, that wouldn't be required. So therefore, we're not discussing that the Eidim came back in. The Eidim don't have to come back in. And in fact, we don't pass like Reb Nosson. And in fact, we could pass like Reb Nosson, and they could hear the testimony separately. The people who the Mishnah are referring to, that Machlisin you bring them back in, is referring to the Baladinim. For Rab Nechemi, it's going according to Rab Nechemi, who holds the Baladinim wouldn't be there during the deliberations. The Tanya of Nechemi Omer, Kach Hoyam in Hagan, Shal Nekiah Das Shabarushalayim. This is how the Nekiah Das, the pure Dayanim, would paskin. Machnisin leValadinim, they would first bring in the Baladinim to hear the opening arguments, Vishoyim in Devrayim, and then Machnisin as Eidim, then they would bring in the Eidim, Vishoyim in Devrayim. And after they heard the testimony and they heard the arguments, everybody is asked to leave, and the deliberations occur when the Eidim and the Dayanim are not present. And then they bring it back in. So it's going according to Reb Nechemiah, and that's why it says Machnisin, because they weren't here until now, because they were dismissed for the discussion. And then Gomer Shadavar Machnisin. Doesn't it say in a different brisa that it's the Eidim that come back in? You want to learn Pshat in the Mishnah that when they finish, they're bringing the Baladinim because they weren't there for the deliberation to be consistent with Reb Nechemiah. But the brisa seems to say it's the Eidim that were sent out. And if the Eidim were sent out and now they're coming in, that means you're telling me that the brisa for sure holds that the two Eidim have to say their testimony together. That brisa holds, that brisa holds, in fact, that the two Eidim have to say their testimony together, and that brisa would not be consistent with Reb Nosson. But our Mishnah, we maintain, it's talking about the Baladin, and it has nothing to do with Reb Nosson. The discussion is, our Mishnah holds Reb Nechemiah that the Baladin should not be there for the deliberations. Gufa. That was a sheet of the Tanakama in the first machlokes. And Rabbi Shimon Kor Chomer, even if One is saying the loan happened on Sunday, and the other one's talking about a loan that happened on Monday, and they're talking about two different loans, but between the two of them, we know Reuven owes Shimon $100,000. What is the machlokes over here? They might be arguing about how to understand the pasuk, or it might just be a logical argument. The logical argument is Amana de Kamasad High, Loy Kamasad High. The first aid is talking about a loan occurring on Sunday. The second aid is speaking about a loan occurring on Monday. They're not a set of Eidim. Each there's an Eidecha and two different things. Umana de Kamasad High, Loy Kamasad High. That's what the Tanakama holds. But the Idach Abshur Makar holds, it will be fine. Because the Idach Amana Ba'alma Tarvayu Kamasad. The fact is, they both are proving that Reuven owes Shimon money. Or the machlokes must be how to understand the pasuk. It says, "Who aid Ira Oyoda." It's talking about somebody who's withholding edus. So let's look at the pasuk. What was that there? Who aid Ira Oyoda. Someone saw edus and he doesn't want to say it, and his friend says, "You better come say edus for me," and then he swears that he didn't see edus, and he really lied. He really did see the edus. If he's not going to say testimony that he's aware of, it's an aveira. So Zok to Gemara, it says who aid Ayra Ayada. Right away, it sounds like Ayra Ayada, meaning they didn't all see the same thing. As long as between both of them, we can prove that Reuven owes Shimon $100,000. But Tanya, we learned. It says lo yakum aid. So Pashup Pshat is aid is singular, right? Why does the Pasuk say lo yakum aid echad beish? It could have said lo yakum aid beish. Isn't aid a singular lashon? So it could have said lo yakum aid. Any idea shahu echad? Matam lo echad. Why did the Torah have to lo yakum aid echad? It's mashma that if it wouldn't have said the word echad, I would have thought that when the Torah said aid, it means two aidim. Therefore, as abonu av kol mokum shenemer aid. Anytime the Torah uses the lashon aid in singular form, it means a set of aidim. Harekan shnayim. Ad sheyifrit lachakos of echad. Unless the Torah says lo yakum aid echad beish, then it means only one aid. But otherwise, the word aid by itself means a pair of aidim. It means two aid. The al karachmana b'lashon chad. Yet, why would it be if the Torah is talking about two aidim? Why should the Torah express two aidim as one aid? Why would it express it that way? To teach us that we look at them as one aid. Lememer ad dechazu tarvayu kechad. It means they both have to be completely uniform. If one aid saw one transaction on Sunday and one saw a different transaction on Monday, that wouldn't work. It's aid. They have to be one and the same. They have to be saying the same thing. What about the shita of Rabbi and Karchel holds they don't have to see it at the same time? It says who aid ayra ayada mikamokim. He focuses on the lashon pasuk, which seems to say you can patch together different ways of having seen this incident. Now we're going to focus on the second machlokes in the brisa, not about whether they have to see it together, but whether they have to say testimony together. That was the Tanakama. And one aid can say testimony on Sunday, and the second aid can say testimony a different day, and that will still be a good testimony of two aid. What is this machlokes? A single aid never has an emunus to be mechayev anybody money. The most that he can ever be mechayev somebody is a shvuah. So this aid echad that's coming has no emunus like emunus. Only if they come as a pair. He never comes from mamona, and therefore they have to come together. Otherwise, as an aid echad, they're not even in the ballpark of dinim mamonas. What about the shita holes that can come separately? Even if they came together, they're not speaking from one mouth. Each person will have to individually say his ethos. So what's the difference if they're separated by a minute or if they're separated by a day? You still put them together, even though they come on separate days. That's the Sfaradik machlokes. Or maybe it's a pasuk. What does it say in the pasuk? After it says, it says, if he will not say edus, it's an aver for him. So what does this have to do with our machlokes as to whether or not they have to say edus together? Zok Gemara as follows. It must be the pligi alei de Abshur ben Karach. We're discussing the second machlokes in the Mishnah or in the Brisa between Reb Nosson and the Chachamim if they have to say it together. Zok Gemara, what are these two Tanoim, Reb Nosson and the Tanna Kama, what do they hold about the Shaila we just discussed? Do they have to see the Eidos together? So Zok Gemara, we're going to assume that Sai Reb Nosson in our Mishnah and Sai the Tanna Kama agree that they have to see it together. They hold like the Rabbanan, the Pligi, Alei, the Reb Shua ben Korcha. They both agree they have to see it together. The question is, do they have to come and tell us the ages together? So v'hacha bakushe hagoda l'riya kamev. The whole question is there a hekesh between the rules of how they have to see an edus to the rules of how they have to say the edus? Mar Sarvar Makshinon, which is the Tanna Kama, Makshina God l'riya, and therefore they have to say it together. Mar Sarvar Loi Makshinon, Reb Nosson holds, no, just because they have to see it together, it doesn't mean that they have to relate it together. Where is this hekesh? Let's go back to the pasuk that we just read. It says, aid oira oyoda. So this is where we're talking about the aid that we learn. Aid means two aidim, and they have to come together, right? And then right after that, the pasuk talks about the delivering of the aidus. Im lo yagd v'no savoynai. So since we have one pasuk that talks about where they saw the aidus and where they give over the aidus, we treat them halachically in the same way, and that is the machlokes. Everybody holds that they have to see it together. The question is, do they also have to relate it together? Rab Shimon ben Yokim have a mishtaka to Rab Yosy bar Chanina lo mismechei. Rab Shimon ben Yokim really wanted to give Rab Yosy Rab Chanina smicha. He really wanted to. V'loikem istaya milsa, and it never worked out that they had the people there to give him the smicha. Yom echad, one day, have a Yosef kamed Rab Yochanan. They were sitting in front of Rab Yochanan, meaning Rab Shimon ben Yokim and Rab Yosy bar Chanina. Amalu, and Rabbi Yochanan asked them, does anybody know what the halacha is? Do we pass like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha that they don't need to see the edus together, or maybe they do need to see the edus together? So he sees, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochim sees this opportunity. Amalei Rabbi Shimon ben Yochim dein yada. You know who can answer this question? Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina. He can answer because he's a master of Talmud Chacham. Amalei lema easy. So Rabbi Yochanan says, okay, Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, please tell us. Do we pass them like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha or not? Omer lei, so Rabbi Shimon ben Yochim says, not so fast, Rabbi Yochanan, not so fast. L'smechei ma'ar b'reishei. First give him smicha, b'reisha. First give him smicha, then they'll tell you. He's not going to just give you this information for free, whether or not we pass him like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha. First give him smicha. So Samchei, Rabbi Yochanan gave him smicha. And then he said, Omer lei b'ni emarli, tell me, Keitzat shemata, how did you hear? Do we pass him like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha or not? Amalei, so this is what Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina responded. Kach shemaiti, this is what I heard. Shemoida Rabbi Shua ben Korcha l'Rab Nosson. Rabbi Shua ben Korcha agrees to Rab Nosson, meaning that even though they have to see the edus, Rabbi Shua ben Korcha holds that you don't have to see the edus together, right? And he holds like Rab Nosson that you also don't have to deliver it together. But we know, we just said a moment ago, that the whole machlokes of Nosson and the Chachamim is if you hold for sure you have to see it together, and the question is, do you apply that to the Agadah as well? Rabbi Shua ben Korcha holds you don't even have to see it together for sure. You don't have to deliver it together. So, so Rabbi Yochanan is disappointed. I want to know if we pass him like Rabbi Nosson. I want to know if we pass him like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha. But you're not telling me that. You're just telling me the hold like Rabbi Nosson. How does that help me? All is that. It could be two different masters, but they have to see the same event. Yeah. Omar. So Rabbi Yochanan was like a little disappointed. I didn't get, this was like a bait and switch. I didn't get what I was expecting. Omar Lazat Shrachti. This is not telling me information that I need. Hashta. Uma Ikariya. Bahada Adodi. Madach Lagabi, the actual seeing of what happened. Rabbi Shua ben Korcha said, Loi Ba'inon, you don't need. Hagadami boy. So you still didn't tell me if we passed like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha. You just said that Rabbi Shua ben Korcha holds like Rabbi Nosson. But we don't know yet. Do you pass like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha or not? So you gave me a nice tidbit of information, but it's not what I asked for. So you sort of bamboozled a smich out of me. I gave you what you asked for, but you didn't give me what I asked for. Amalei, but he told him, once I gave you smicha, I'm not taking it back. You got your smicha already. Amar b'zeir shmami na gava rabba kivin the samach samach. You see from here that once a chashav gives smicha, he can't take it back. Oh, so I like what I was says. Listen, Simon, we want our smicha back. You're ruining our name. But I see over here, I can tell him, Gava Rabba, once you give smicha, you can't get it back. Okay, there's no turning back. Amar B'chibar Abin Amarav. Halacha Rabbi Shua ben Korcha. We pass like Rabbi Shua ben Korcha that they don't have to see the edus at the same time. bein bekakois. Say if it was an edus on who karka belongs to, and there, what's the difference? Which day it was, right? We're talking about the hin karka, but even bein b'metaltlin, where we're talking about two different metaltlin, right? Because the metaltlin means Reuven saw the loan occur on Sunday, and Shimon saw a loan occur on Monday. They could be two different loans, right? They're two different things, but we still take from there that there was at least one loan made. But by karka, it's much more of a svara to say we're talking about the same karka. We're not talking about two different things. So Rav Paskin halachim shu b'korcha bein b'karkois bein b'metalton. Ula said no. Halacha b'shu b'korcha b'karkois avaloi b'metalton. B'shu b'korcha might argue on both cases, but we only paskin like him by karka. Amalei Abaye halacha mechal the polik. If you're telling me Ula that the halacha is like b'shu b'korcha b'karkois, but not by metalton, that means that by metalton there's a machlokes, and the chachamim argue on Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by metalton. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha holds even by metalton it's naman, and the chachamim say not, and we don't pass like Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. The problem is the Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Abhuna Amar Rav moidim chachamim lo Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by this karka. By you telling me that we paskin, by Ula telling me that we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by karka, that would indicate that the chachamim argue by karka. They must be arguing by both, and we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by karka. The problem is we have Rav Huna saying that the chachamim agree to Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by edus karka, that you can combine two separate edus. V'tani Rav Idi bar Avin b'Nezikin de Karna, and Rav Idi bar Avin learned in the Maseches Nezikin that was recorded by Karna. Moidin chachamim Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha be'edus bechor ube'edus karka ube'edus chazaka v'chein shebeben v'shebevas. So the problem is, you Ula are saying that they're arguing side by karka and side by metaltlin, but we have a whole lineup of people who are saying that there is no machlokes by karka, and even the Rabbanan agree that the testimony of karka could have been at two different times. Zok the Gemara, Gavar Karamis. You can't ask a kasha from Rav Abba, Rav Huna on Ula. Mar Sovar Kligi. Ula holds that the Chachamim argue even by karka, and we pass them like them by karka. Umar Sovar and Rabbi Idi bar Avin and Rav Abba bar Huna, they could hold that the Chachamim are moida by karka. Umar Sovar like Kligi. Okay, we're going to have to stop here because it's getting a little complicated. We had a brisa that said moidim chachamim Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha by edus bechor, by edus karka. So edus karka, we know what it is. But what is edus bechor? What is edus chazaka? And what is v'chein shebeben v'shebebas? So you could see the Gemara asks, "My v'chein shebeben v'shebebas," meaning the Gemara felt that it's simple to understand what edus bechor is and what edus chazaka is. So edus chazaka is pretty simple. If you have edim that are saying edus that somebody was there for 3 years, right? On the chazaka, but what if a guy was there for 7 years? And you have one that's saying, I saw him living there for the first 3 years of the Shemitah cycle, no one bothered him. The other aide said, I saw him living there for the last 3 years of the Shemitah cycle, no one bothered him. So there you'll combine their edus and we'll say it's chazaka. Even though my edus is not on the same 3 years as your edus, but we still have edus of a chazaka. That's what chazaka means. And the edus of Bechor, it's actually a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi says it's related to being mater of Bechor nowadays. We know that if a Bechor has Kedushas Korban, but if it has a mum, it's given to the Kohen. So it's a discussion of whether or not a mum was actually happened by itself in an animal, or if the Kohen put it in. That's what the discussion is about. Tosfos learns the edus Bechor is completely something different. It's a case where someone heard from his father, Zachazeh is Ploni ben Bechor. So there's two edim. One heard the father say on one day that this son is a Bechor, and the other one said it on another day. So there's a discussion what Bechor is. So that's Bechor, that's Chazaka, and Beben V'Shebabas, we'll have to see tomorrow how the Gemara defines that. Okay, we'll stop here. Shkoyach Rabbi Yitzchak for pointing out that I was completely on the wrong